Hi friends, today we're here to talk about this, the Brooks Glycerin 21. Let's do this. Hey friends, my name's Chris Tejas. I'm an absolutely average runner and a shoe fitter at Runner's Choice Waterloo, which is a local independent run shop in Ontario, Canada. I try on pretty much every shoe model that comes through this door, so I figured it was time that I start putting out some reviews, letting you know what I'm thinking about the shoes, what the community's saying, all that kind of stuff. Now, I love all the shoe brands that we carry, and hopefully that means I'll be able to give you a really well-rounded perspective on the shoe, as well as talk a little bit about what I'm hearing every day when I'm putting these shoes onto people's feet and the experience that they're having when they come to our group runs, community runs, demo nights, all that kind of stuff. Now, before we start the review, I want to give you just a little bit of background on me and my running. I'm a very neutral runner. I don't really have any injuries right now, and I've had to work through very little injuries in the past. I've been lucky so far. Some Achilles stuff, some knee stuff occasionally, but nothing too crazy. I tend to run more on my mid to forefoot, and I usually run in lower drop shoes. I also tend to favor a more wide toe box, but I will note that especially in any of the shoes moving forward, what I think about it versus how I think it'll work for you. Okay, time to talk about the Glycerin 21. Now, quick disclaimer, the shoe was actually sent to me by Brooks as part of their seeding round that they do to shops as a new shoe launches. Starting with the specs, this is a neutral road shoe. It's got a 38mm in the heel and 28mm in the forefoot for a 10mm drop. In a men's size 9, we're looking at a 9.8 ounce or 277 grams. Now, I'm a size 12.5, so I didn't even bother weighing mine. What I will say is that overall, it felt pretty light considering how much cushioning is under it, but the weight of it did start to become more noticeable as I started to pick up the pace and run through some intervals, getting into some speed work, but we'll get to that. For cushioning, they're using the DNA Loft V3. Most people know about this by now, but this is a great, really nice cushioned, nitrogen-infused foam. One last thing to note that I think is kind of cool is that this is a 60% recycled upper. And hey, who doesn't like more recycled uppers? For the upper, I am really happy with this shoe. I think it's really, really comfortable. The collar itself is nice and plush, and it's a little bit firm overall in the heel. It does have this kind of overlay here, which helps to firm it up a little bit. Like, I can't press in on that very easily, which I think is good for a lot of people. If you need a shoe that has a bit of structure in the heel cup, this is going to be a great option. It's also, because it's so plush here, if you're somebody who gets a bit of rubbing or discomfort, it's so soft. I really don't think you'd have any issues with that. The tongue is not gusseted, which some people like, some people don't like. I like to have a kind of semi-gusseted tongue to keep it in place, but I did not find that this tongue shifted around too much, which is super nice. Lacing, very average laces. Brooks makes good laces. They tend to stay nice and secure. I never really have any issues with their laces overall. It isn't that kind of bungee lace that they did with the old Hyperion Tempo, which is great because that kind of bothered me, and I found that that was a bit uncomfortable on the metatarsals. Something to note is that I have quite a high instep, and so I have pretty sensitive metatarsals because I need a lot of volume in a shoe. And we'll get to that part and how that kind of worked for me. But overall, I would just say really nice. The insole itself is totally average. It looks like every other insole from Brooks. Doesn't really have any extra cushioning or beading or anything like they do in some of the other brands, but it's fine. Okay, so what about the midsole? This is what everybody cares about when they're looking at the tech of a shoe, the midsole. Tell me about the midsole. Well, it's super pillowy and soft, but it's not mushy, which I really like. You've got so much underneath you with this shoe, but I don't find that it results in a landing that is really like taking a lot away from you. It does bounce back nicely, and overall, I would say the midsole is really nicely cushioned. I think it's an improvement over the last Glycerin, which also was great. You know, I was talking to Kevin, who's our manager here, and he just picked up the Glycerin 21s, and he had the 20 before that, and I think he really liked it. He was saying that, you know, he was sort of sad that he was planning on making this his casual shoe because of how good it felt. So nothing crazy to say about the midsole. They added some stack height, and that's great. It's really nice and comfortable. And if you're buying this shoe, you're buying it because it has a lot of cushioning to it. So adding more cushion while being able to bring the weight down is always a plus, right? Moving on to the outsole, if we take a look at it, you do have some really nice blown rubber overall here. I think you have plenty of it too. I don't think that you really have to worry about if you're going to be slipping or sliding or anything like that. I will say that I think the exposed midsole is a little bit softer in the front and a little bit more firm in the back. I don't know if that kind of translates to the ride 100%, but it is something to note. But I do like the fact that the tread that's over top is actually pretty thick, so it means that you're not going to be running directly onto the midsole quite as much as you would in some other shoes. I think that's great. Some general notes about the fit, the feel, and my experience running in the Glycerin 21. I think the shoe fits really nicely true to size. I ordered a size 12.5. It fit me just like I expected 12.5 to fit. It does have a pretty wide toe box. I would actually even say if you're somebody that tends to go for a wide because you're just a little bit in between a regular and a wide, you might be able to get away with a regular width on this one. Andrew, one of the owners at the run shop here, he has this in a regular width and he oftentimes will go for a wide almost every time. And in this shoe, he didn't have to, which is kind of cool. So if you don't like a wide toe box, I would say that this could be a bit of an issue for you because I do think it's quite roomy. Pretty much everyone I've put this in has noted how roomy the toe box is. I haven't had a lot of issues with people like slipping and sliding back and forth in it, so I don't think that it's going to be an issue for most regular people, but if you err on the side of narrow, this shoe you might find some issues in. One thing I was nervous about with this shoe, because you do have that higher drop to it and the fact that it's such a soft and plush collar, I was worried about heel slippage. I didn't find any. It wasn't really an issue for me. Your experience may vary from mine, but overall it felt pretty comfortable for me. Okay, so what do I feel like this shoe is best suited for? Well, I did pretty much all my running for about 10 days in this shoe, which meant I was doing tempo runs, I was doing speed work, I was doing easy pace, I was doing runs with my dogs, long runs, everything, right? I like to really put the shoe through its paces in a number of different avenues and see what it works well for. Nobody would buy this shoe as their speedwork shoe. I understand that, but I wanted to see what would happen if I picked up the pace, and overall it kept up pretty nicely. I would say that for me, when I really started to push the pace, when I was getting like, you know, sub 345 per kilometer or something like that, I felt like I had a lot of shoe under me and it felt kind of slow. So this shoe for sure is for your daily runs, your long runs. You could definitely do some tempo work in it. You can get away with doing your speed work, but I wouldn't really recommend it. Really, its sweet spot is in that everyday trainer, long run, mixed tempo run, or for people who just really want to baby their legs while they're doing all of their work. So I think it's a great shoe to add to your arsenal, but I don't think it's the only option. Okay, so what are some alternatives? I would say if you like the idea of a shoe like this, but this doesn't quite feel right for you, you don't like the price point, you don't like the feel of it or whatever, I would probably look at something like the Hoka Clifton. That's going to be a little bit lighter, a little bit snappier, but also I would say a little bit more narrow, so keep that in mind. Probably the most obvious comparative to this would be the New Balance 1080. I think that's just like a really nicely well-cushioned shoe, lots underneath you, similar wider toe box, and a great option from New Balance if you want to go that route. Otherwise, I would look at something like the Saucony Triumph. Maybe even the new Ride 17 has quite a bit of cushioning underneath it, but the Triumph is going to be their kind of high cushion alternative. That one is going to be a little more narrow in the toe box as well, so keep that in mind. And the offset is the same. You have a 10 mil offset, so that's kind of apples to apples, which is nice. Nova Blast 4 would be a really, really great option. Nice and bouncy, keeps you off your feet. It's really lightweight. Not quite as much underneath you in the forefoot from my experience running in it, but I do think it would be similar. I think the shape of the shoe is actually kind of similar too, and the Nova Blast and all the Asics actually lately, I would say over the last couple of years, have really widened out in the toe box a little bit, where they used to be like the most narrow. Now they're a little bit more open, a little more comfortable. So I would say that those are the four that I would kind of think about if I was going to say, Glycerin's great, but what's the alternative? So we actually recently had a demo night with Brooks and we had a whole bunch of people try this on. I've also had the chance to give a lot of average everyday people this shoe and see what they think about it, put it on some people's feet. A bunch of people have gone home with it. Generally speaking, what I've heard people say is that it's super soft and comfortable. The toe box is a little bit wide. It tends to fit a lot of different feet, which I think is cool, and Brooks is usually pretty good about that. And overall, I think people just think that it's a well-suited shoe for a lot of different situations. I will say some people who are really fast runners that I know have noted that they just feel it's a little bit slow, but they would never choose this shoe for their fast paces anyways, and I'm not going to hit those paces, so it doesn't bother me that much. So overall, I have very little negative to say about this shoe. I don't think it's the prettiest looking shoe. I don't think it's going to win any awards in that sense. I don't think Brooks does a great job with the aesthetics of their shoes personally, but I do think they make some really excellent shoes, and every once in a while they just knock it out of the park aesthetically. Ultimately, it comes down to you and what fits you best. My recommendation, get into your local independent run shop and see how it feels. Let me know what you think, and if you have the shoe, let me know what you've been running and how it's been feeling for you. All right, thank you so much. Appreciate you watching, and I look forward to making more of these. Have a lovely run. Peace.